Members of the J Area, pro wrestling fans across the world, my name is Jose Ramos Jr., bringing you another predictions video in regards to the next AEW pay-per-view. Of course, I'm referring to AEW Revolution, taking place in Los Angeles, California, this upcoming Sunday. Of course, this is where we tackle each match that is currently scheduled on the card and try to predict the outcome of every single match contested. But before we do that, make sure you subscribe to the channel in order to keep up to date with all the pro wrestling content that we produce here on YouTube. Now, with that being said, let's just jump right into it with the first matchup here, the AEW World Tag Team Championships. The Outrunners, an up-and-coming tag team that have been gaining a level of momentum over the course of the last year and a half. They will be challenging the Hurt Syndicate. Bobby Lashley, Shelton Benjamin with MVP in their corner. Ever since they debuted as a group in All Elite Wrestling, it's been an instant success. The crowd is very much behind the Hurt Syndicate, one of the more entertaining aspects of the show for sure. Not only can they go in the ring, they have the look, they have the theme song, they have the support of the crowd. For a matchup that I think there is no doubt who's going to be winning, there is a level of intrigue because of who's involved. The Outrunners have been a team that have been able to gain the favor of the AEW audience, I should say, and really lean in on that nostalgia feeling. We talk about the wrestling of the past. These guys are very much a throwback to like the 80s style of tag team wrestling. Them going up against the Hurt Syndicate, everything points towards the Hurt Syndicate successfully defending those titles. I can't see Bobby Lashley or Shelton Benjamin, for that matter, taking a pinfall loss to either one of the Outrunners. Maybe in the future, not right now for sure. I still think there's a little bit of room for the Outrunners to grow as a credible tag team, but for the time being, they're an entertaining tag team that should have a good matchup here with the Hurt Syndicate. And speaking of the Hurt Syndicate, these next two competitors have a little bit of history with the Hurt Syndicate. Of course, I'm referring to the number one contenders matchup between Swerve Strickland and Ricochet. Another matchup here that has a level of intrigue leading into the contest. We've had a level of build, especially with that heel turn from Ricochet some time ago, really breathing in a breath of fresh air for Ricochet, who's been criticized for his mic skills, I will say, in the ring. Very tough to criticize him in that regard. Ricochet and Swerve Strickland have been at it for a while now. This adds another layer to the story, as whoever wins this matchup will be next in line for a world title matchup. Ricochet and Swerve already having solid matches in the past. This is looking like it's going to be the blow off and the one final matchup that will determine the trajectory of both participants here. I like the idea of having Ricochet brush shoulders with some of the top guys in AEW, presenting him as a credible threat. But I also look at Swerve Strickland and I'm thinking, man, this guy's been on a roll the last year and a half. 2024 was one of the best years a wrestler has had in recent memory, especially for a newcomer as an AEW World Champion. Obviously, he's not a newcomer in the business, but main event kind of level talent for Swerve Strickland. I look at this matchup and I think, although it would be interesting to see Ricochet get over here, I'm looking how they were building up that interaction between the two in the ring on this past episode of Dynamite. I'm leaning towards Swerve. Swerve Strickland gets the victory, earns a championship matchup against the AEW World Champion, and I'm thinking we also get the return of the robe to Prince Nana. I think it's going to be a nice bow on what has been a surprisingly good feud between the two. Rocky started at the beginning, but overall, they caught their bearings, and I'm looking for Swerve Strickland to capitalize on this momentum and head towards back into the main event scene. From one number one contender to the next, we're talking about the AEW TBS Championship. Momo Watanabe will be challenging Mercedes Mone, who has an abundance of championship titles around her waist. This matchup, although it is Mercedes Mone, who I do believe is one of the best women's wrestlers in today's game, this for me doesn't really have much heat to it. I honestly am not looking at this matchup as a must-see. I take nothing away from Momo or Mercedes, but it's one of those matchups where the result, I think there is no question who's going to win. Maybe they surprise us with Momo winning, but being that it's a TBS title, it's for AEW. I don't see Mercedes Moné dropping it. If it was one of the other titles, like the Rev Pro or the New Japan Strong Women's title, then I'll give it a thought and a possibility. But being that it's the TBS title, I cannot see Mercedes losing it. This is a matchup that should be solid, but again, in terms of the interest, in terms of the heat leading into it, it's not there for me. I'm going Mercedes Moné to successfully defend the TBS title. Now, a matchup that I'm really looking forward to is actually the Continental Championship as Kazuchika Okada defends his title against Brody King. The contrasting styles between Okada and King is enough for me to get invested in this matchup. We've seen Brody King as a member of the House of Black alongside Murphy and Malachi Black, but seeing him as a solo star here, of course, he's with Julia Hart in his corner. I like this new fresh take on Brody King, allowing him to kind of step out into the limelight, present himself as a star. I'm looking for a star performance here by Brody King. I would love it. I would absolutely love to see him win the Continental Championship, but I don't see it happening. I think Okada gets the victory, continues this title reign of his. Again, I would love to see Brody King win the championship, but I'm thinking AEW is going to stick with Okada and have him drop it to someone else in the near future. I do think we're getting close to this title reign being ended, just not quite yet to Brody King. Another championship on the line will be the AEW International Championship as Konosuke Takeshita defends his title against Kenny Omega, the cleaner, one of the best of all time. Kenny Omega recently returning from, taking a little bit of a hiatus away from wrestling. Thankfully, he's back and looking like in the best shape of his life and in quite some time. Kenny Omega and Takeshita have history. Takeshita having 2 pinfall victories over Kenny Omega, already having the edge both in the ring and arguably psychologically over the cleaner as well. I look at this match as being one of the matches that could steal the show. There are several of those type of matches on this card in AEW's Revolution. I do think, though, that because we didn't see a title change in Continental, we didn't see a title change for the TBS, nor the tag team titles, I think whenever you have a pay-per-view, odds are 1 or 2 titles are going to change hands. I think this is the one where we do see a title change. Kenny Omega making his return. A big celebration, a big wave of momentum coming in the way for Kenny Omega. I think he finally gets the pinfall victory over Takeshita, who would still have an advantage, and I'm thinking we would go towards a 4th matchup between the two, but nonetheless, Kenny Omega returns, wins championship gold, and then we move forward in the next saga of Kenny Omega. When we throw out the word saga, one wrestler for AEW comes to mind. And really, you can make the argument that either one of these guys could be in that conversation. MJF and Hangman Adam Page, 2 wrestlers that haven't really been with each other quite some time, really. I mean, they never had a one-on-one bout on pay-per-view, but now we see the 2 going head-to-head here on Revolution. It's one of the matchups that I'm looking forward to because it's 2 of AEW's homegrown talent. These guys have been there since day one. MJF arguably is the number 1 heel in that company in terms of the longevity of its existence. And then Hangman Adam Page, it's been commonly discussed that he's the main character of All Elite Wrestling. So to see these 2 finally come together on a pay-per-view with a meaningful story, I'm all for it. The build-up has been interesting as it's been Hangman Adam Page kind of leaning towards babyface and heel. MJF criticizing the fans for supporting Hangman and that he himself has not done anything wrong. Shout out to the t-shirt he wore recently. And I look at this and I think this can't be a one-off matchup. I think if Hangman Adam Page wins the matchup, it's one and done. Where can you go from here? The beatdown suggests, the beatdown on Dynamite that is, it would suggest that Hangman gets the win, gets his comeuppance, and gets that revenge on Maxwell. I don't see it happening. I think that's one of those instances where they want to subvert your expectations. MJF gets the win here, and we move forward and have a rematch. Maybe at Dynasty, that might be the next pay-per-view for AEW. I'm going to pick MJF to win this matchup. We have a rematch, and Hangman Adam Page eventually wins the feud and moves up the card back into the AEW World title scene. We talk about moving up in the title scene. These next 2 competitors want to be in that conversation for the main event. I talked about MJF and Hangman Adam Page, who were 2 of the original stars of All Elite Wrestling. This steel cage match having 2 of the new faces of AEW, Kyle Fletcher versus Will Ospreay. 2 of the best wrestlers in the world, 2 of the best that AEW has to offer. You place them in a cage and it's already high anticipation, high drama is expected between these 2, especially when they were closer than a lot of other friends in the business. And when you're close with your friends like that, you know the chemistry is going to be off the charts. Kyle Fletcher and Will Ospreay having already great matches in the past, most recently at Full Gear. I look at these 2 and I'm thinking, Kyle Fletcher is on the rise, a future star, if not already in the making. But Will Ospreay is, arguably the best wrestler in the world, depending on what your, preference and style is, of course. But I look at Will Ospreay and I don't think it's any doubt He is one of the best, of course, depending on your preference. Will Ospreay versus Kyle Fletcher, one of the main selling points of AEW Revolution. It's one of the reasons why I want to check this match out, but I'm looking at it, I'm thinking Will Ospreay gets the victory here. Again, moving him up the card one step closer to the AEW World title. Should be a banger of a matchup. Give these guys 40 minutes, including entrances, and it's surely going to deliver for the crowd, both pay-per-view and in attendance. Will Ospreay gets the victory and continues to elevate towards the top of the card. We've now reached the final two matches of AEW Revolution, both being for the world titles of their respective divisions. Let's talk about the women's division first. Toni Storm versus Mariah May for the AEW Women's World Championship. It was one of the best stories of 2024. They had a solid matchup at Grand Slam, and now we have the payoff. The blow-off, falls count anywhere, no disqualification, no countouts, no rules. I'm really looking forward to this. I think of all the matches, the steel cage match and this world title match between Storm and May, those are the two selling points for me. Toni Storm has been a dream for AEW, easily their best women's wrestler, and I think there's an argument to be made that she is the MVP of that company. Her ability to really dive into the character of timeless Toni Storm, the commitment into the role, as well as, again, subverting expectations when she became, classic Toni Storm, and it was all just a ruse as a way to get back at Mariah May. I love this story. Whenever I see these two on camera together, I gotta sit down and watch it. Toni Storm versus Mariah May. I'm expecting a lot of color. I'm expecting a lot of violence. I'm expecting a lot of high spots. This is the call-off. This is the end of the feud, at least for the foreseeable future. Mariah May had a championship title run there. Hit or miss, depending again on your preference. Toni Storm just won the championship at Grand Slam. I do not see her dropping the title so early. She will continue her fourth title reign as the AEW Women's World Champion and will move forward in the division and see who else will step up to timeless Toni Storm, who I have emerging victorious. For the main event, Cope, Edge, Adam Copeland, whatever you want to call him, he's going to be challenging for the AEW World Championship against the Death Riders' leader, their de facto leader, in Jon Moxley. This is an interesting match because over the course of the build, we have seen the likes of Pac, Claudio, and Wheeler Yuta all being taken away from the equation. Marina Shafir, of course, was also taken away as a result of Willow Nightingale's attack on her, the Concerto, classic spot there. And I think what they want to do is obviously give the impression it's going to be one-on-one. Moxley versus Cope for the World Championship. I do think it's also important to remember that Christian Cage is out there with a contract that guarantees him a championship opportunity of his choice. Surely he's going to be watching this matchup with a close eye. But one thing to point out, Claudio, Pac, and Marina Shafir all taken out, as a result of an attack. Wheeler Yuta was the one that walked out on Moxley. He's the only one that wasn't physically attacked. He left on his own accord, basically insinuating, I've had it with this, emotional, verbal, psychological abuse from Moxley, not guaranteeing his participation will not be seen in this matchup. If you ask me, it's another case of subverting expectations. I think Wheeler Yuta is going to get involved and cost Cope this championship matchup. Moxley's going to win the title. They're going to continue this Death Rider run for a little bit longer. I think the eventual winner, my original prediction, if you check it back all the way in October, I had said that I thought Darby Allin was going to be the guy to defeat Jon Moxley. I'm now leaning towards Will Ospreay. I think that's going to be the guy to win the championship and successfully defend AEW and their honor and get rid of the Death Riders. I think that's what we're building towards. I think Moxley gets the victory here. I'm hoping for a good matchup, but probably a matchup that's going to be more resembling of a brawl between these two for the first time ever, one-on-one, Moxley versus Cope. It's a matchup that has the level of intrigue, but I think people have already had enough of the Death Riders. Cope is actually under a little bit of fire here for his criticism of the direction of his character and how he's presented with the other members of the roster. I'm looking forward to it. I do think Mox gets the victory, but I want to hear from you guys in the comments. Make sure to drop them down below in terms of what are your predictions for AEW Revolution, what are your thoughts on the build, and what are some of the matches that we're looking forward to for AEW Dynasty as well, the next pay-per-view in their schedule. If you haven't already, give us a like in the video to continue giving us that level of momentum when we're building up this channel. Comment down below, as I mentioned, any questions, comments, or predictions, and subscribe to the channel for more content like this on YouTube. Again, my name is Jose Ramos Jr. Thank you for checking out this prediction video with us, and I hope you all enjoy your weekend. We'll see you in the next one.